Good morning and welcome to the day number 4 of IPAI Aviation Watch 10th Regulators and Policymakers Retreat being held here in Goa. With me is Mr. Rakesh Sarin. Welcome to the show, Mr. Sarin.
Thank you.
Mr. Sarin, you are the MD of Wärtsilä India, the leader in distributed generation technology and solutions. Sir, can you explain to us what is the importance of distributed generation given the current economic and electricity scenario in the country?
Well, good question. To explain distributed generation, let me start with centralized generation. And what is centralized generation? Very simple. All of us have heard of ultra mega power plants. Now, these are the power plants which are located in a particular place, corner in the country, basically where the fuel is available, like coal, and you generate huge quantum of power, 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 megawatts, and then we pump that power to various consumption centers, because the consumption centers are not where the power plant is located. And naturally, to pump that power to the consumption centers, we need huge amount of transmission lines, which today, in fact, are quite clogged and needs huge amount of investment. Now, having understood this, distributed power, as the name suggests, is the generation of power at consumption centers. And therefore, you produce power at a place where there's a huge demand and consume that power at that place. Now, there's a subtle difference between the power what is produced centrally and what is produced locally, where the consumption center is. Now, let me explain that the centralized power is very good. And these ultra mega power plants are need for the country, and they are needed. But if you look at our consumption pattern, in the morning when we get up, that's the time when the power demand is minimum. In the night time, we're all sleeping, and then the power demand starts going up. For instance, if you take a particular place, let's say the demand during the night time is 100 megawatts. By the time we reach to the evening time, it could be 200 megawatts. So 100 megawatt is the base load demand of that area, and 200 megawatt is a peak load demand. Now, centralized power plants are good because this is cheap power, very reasonable power. So you generate that power and meet the base load demand. But the power cannot be stored.
Right.
So whatever is produced has to be consumed. So instead of building a pipeline worth 200 megawatts of pumping the power, you build a pipeline only for 100 megawatts. And balance, what is a up and down in the consumption demand during the course of the day, that can be produced locally, which is the distributed power. And this distributed power can be produced locally. It need not be put to the very high voltage grid. In layman's language, the transmission losses would be much less, which today is very high. And then, another very important factor for the distributed power plants is that they need to be very, very flexible. Meaning that depending on the change in the demand pattern, these plants can increase or decrease the generation, which a centralized plant can't do, because these are big, huge plants and they run, at a constant speed. And the distributed power plant, therefore, if I come to the key benefits, for a general understanding, these distributed power plants, number one, will reduce the load on the transmission lines. Number two, will bring efficiency from the point of view that the transmission losses would be bare minimal. In the country today, the technical losses could be as high as 6-7%, but the technical and commercial losses are as high as 30%. So in a distributed plant, you produce at the consumption center and consume at the consumption center. So huge amount of savings is there in the energy. Number three, these distributed plants, the technology which is available, for example, the recip technology what Wärtsilä has, we have a very high level of energy efficiency, in these distributed plants. An open cycle of 44-45%, and a combined cycle, or if we take the CHPs, combined heat and power and chilling, the efficiency can go as high as 70%. Meaning, in a centralized plant, if you consume 100 calories, on one side of the power plant, at this place, for our daily needs of electricity, we get something like 20 to 25 units. But the carbon dioxide is produced by 100 units of energy.
Absolutely.
In a distributed plant, 100 units of energy, we can get something like up to 70 units of energy as a useful energy. And therefore, even the carbon dioxide production, in a distributed plant is almost 1/3 with the good technologies like ours, or 1/3 or 1/4. And today, with the advent of gas availability and all in the country and the grid pipeline, even on the oil base, there is an ample opportunity of putting these distributed plant all across, at the consumption centers, and derive the benefit of efficiency, reduced loading on the environment, scaling up and scaling down. So all these benefits can be made available. And lastly, which is, I would say, could be really a solution for need of the hour, these distributed plants can be deployed in a time span of 12 to 14 months, vis-a-vis a big centralized plant of 6 to 7 years. And because these plants are a smaller capacity, let's say 100, 200, 300 megawatt capacity, they can be financially closed in very quickly, and then deployed with the modular technology what we have in just 12 months period. So there is a rapid deployment of generation capacity which can happen pretty quickly.